The hydroponics bay hummed with gentle life as Naya Voss tended to the luminescent flowers that had become her specialty. These weren't ordinary earth blooms, they were hybrid creations, engineered to thrive in the artificial atmosphere of her hidden sanctuary. Each petal glowed with bioluminescent patterns that reminded her displaced guests of home worlds they might never see again. The jasmine analogues are responding well to the adjusted mineral content, she murmured to herself, checking the nutrient flow to a cluster of silver-blue flowers that released a fragrance similar to those found on Kepler 442b. Her hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting growth parameters on the holographic interface that monitored thousands of plant species from across the galaxy. This asteroid had been her home for 3 years now, ever since she'd abandoned her position at the Terran Agricultural Institute to pursue something more meaningful. The official records listed her as missing, presumed dead in a transport accident. The truth was far more complicated, and far more illegal. Naya had built the first interspecies botanical sanctuary in known space, hidden in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Here, among gardens that bloomed with flowers from 100 worlds, refugees from various conflicts found temporary peace. She provided them with familiar foods, healing plants from their homeworlds, and most importantly, hope. The sanctuary's sensors chimed softly, indicating an approaching vessel. Naya's stomach tightened as she checked the readings. The ship's energy signature was unfamiliar, and it was broadcasting a distress signal in what appeared to be Zephyrian script. She'd learned to read several alien languages during her years here, but Zephyrian remained challenging due to its complex tonal variations. Sanctuary control to approaching vessel, she transmitted, switching to the Universal Translation Protocol. State your business and intentions. The response came through static-filled and weak. This is, refugee transport, medical emergency, requesting, sanctuary. Naya's training kicked in immediately. She'd established protocols for exactly this situation, though each case presented unique challenges. Opening the sanctuary's camouflage shields, she guided the damaged ship into the main docking bay. The vessel was small, clearly designed for speed rather than comfort, with hull scarring that suggested recent combat damage. As the airlock cycled, Naya found herself face to face with two figures. The first was obviously human, a woman with the weathered look of someone who'd spent too much time in space. But it was her companion who made Naya's breath catch. He was Zephyrian, the first she'd ever seen in person. Tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light and hair that moved as if underwater even in the still air. His most striking features were his eyes, large and multifaceted like precious gems, currently clouded with pain and exhaustion. Pale blue blood seeped through makeshift bandages wrapped around his torso. "Please," the human woman said, supporting her companion's weight. "He needs medical attention. They've been hunting us for days." "I'm Naya Voss," she said, moving to help support the injured Zephyrian. "Welcome to Haven's Rest. Let's get him to the medical bay." The Zephyrian's eyes found hers, and for a moment, Naya felt something strange, a flutter of sensation at the edge of her consciousness, like someone gently touching the surface of still water. His lips moved, forming words in his native language that the translator rendered as, "Your heart, it sings with green growing things." "He's empathic," the human woman explained as they made their way through corridors lined with climbing vines and softly glowing botanical displays. Zephyrians can sense emotional resonance. "I'm Vera, by the way. We've been running refugee transport for 6 months now." The medical bay was Naya's pride, a fusion of human medical technology and healing practices she'd learned from various species. Crystalline formations from Arcturus 7 hummed with healing frequencies, while Earth-origin lavender and aloe grew in carefully maintained beds along the walls. As they settled the Zephyrian onto the bio-bed, Naya began her examination. The wounds were severe but not fatal, energy weapon burns that had been partially treated but were showing signs of infection. "What's his name?" she asked, preparing a broad-spectrum antibiotic that would be safe for Zephyrian physiology. "Kale Nethes," Vera replied. "He's an artist, if you can believe it. Creates living sculptures using bioluminescent organisms." The military targeted his workshop because they claimed his art was being used to send coded messages to resistance cells. Naya looked down at Kale's peaceful face as the medical scanners worked to assess his condition. His features were delicate, almost fragile, but there was strength in the line of his jaw and the set of his shoulders. As she worked to clean and treat his wounds, she found herself thinking about his art, living sculptures that grew and changed. It was a concept that resonated deeply with her own work. The infection is responding to treatment, she said after an hour of careful work. He'll need several days of rest, but he should recover fully. Vera sagged with relief. I was so afraid. They came out of nowhere. A patrol cruiser that wasn't supposed to be in that sector. Kale threw himself between their weapons and a group of refugee children we were transporting. The kids made it to the escape pod, but Kale. He protected others at risk to himself, Naya finished, feeling a warm recognition. This was why she'd built the sanctuary, for beings like Kale who chose compassion over self-preservation. As if sensing her thoughts, Kale's eyes fluttered open. They found hers immediately, and again she felt that strange sensation, stronger now, like harmonics resonating through her mind. The garden. He whispered, his voice carrying the musical quality characteristic of his species. I can feel it growing. So much life, so much love poured into green and growing things. Naya felt her cheeks warm. You should rest. The healing chambers will help your body recover more quickly. Stay, he said, his hand finding hers with surprising strength. Please. The darkness, it's been so long since I felt anything but fear and pain. Your presence, it's like sunlight on new leaves. Vera smiled knowingly. I should check on the ship's repairs, she said diplomatically. Naya, could you show me to guest quarters later? I think our patient needs some quiet time to heal. As Vera left, Naya found herself alone with Kale. His hand was still in hers, warm and somehow perfectly fitted to her grip. She could feel his pulse through their joined palms, steady and strong despite his injuries. Tell me about your art, she said, settling into the chair beside his bed. Kale's expression brightened, and the pain lines around his eyes softened. I work with living light, he said. Organisms that respond to emotion and thought. They grow into forms that express the deepest feelings of their creator. My last piece, it was a tree that bloomed with the colors of hope. Blue for new beginnings, gold for courage, silver for love that transcends understanding. It sounds beautiful, Naya said, imagining such a creation growing in her gardens. Would you like to see it? Kale asked. When I'm stronger, I could recreate it. If you have the right growth medium, the organisms can be cultivated in almost any environment. Naya squeezed his hand gently. I'd love that. And Kale? You're safe here. Whatever you're running from, whatever led you to my sanctuary, you can stay as long as you need. For the first time since his arrival, Kale truly smiled. The expression transformed his entire face, making the bioluminescent patterns in his skin pulse with warm, golden light. Thank you, he said. I haven't had a real home in so long, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be welcomed. As Naya watched over him through the night, monitoring his healing progress and adjusting the medical parameters, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in her carefully ordered world. The sanctuary had always been about preserving life and offering hope to those who had lost everything. But now, looking at Kale's sleeping form bathed in the soft glow of healing crystals, she wondered if perhaps she'd been the one in need of rescue all along. The third day of Kale's recovery brought the first sign that their connection went deeper than either had imagined. Naya woke in her private quarters with the taste of starlight on her tongue and the phantom sensation of wind through crystalline leaves, neither of which existed in her carefully controlled environment. She found Kale in the sanctuary's heart, the central garden where she'd cultivated a grove of singing trees from Proxima Centauri. He sat among their silver-barked trunks, his fingers trailing through the bioluminescent moss that carpeted the ground. His wounds had healed remarkably quickly, leaving only faint traces of scar tissue that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. You were dreaming, he said without looking up as she approached. I could feel it at the edges of my consciousness. Dreams of worlds you've never seen, painted in colors that don't exist in human perception. Naya settled beside him on the moss, which responded to their presence with gentle waves of blue-green light. I was dreaming of your home world, wasn't I? Zephyria Prime, before the war. Kale's expression grew distant. The crystal forests, yes. Where the trees grow in perfect harmony, their roots intertwined not just physically but emotionally. Each grove was a community, sharing thoughts and feelings through bioelectric networks that spanned continents. It's beautiful, Naya breathed. In the dream, I could feel the connection between all living things. Is that what it's like for your people? That constant awareness of others' emotions? For most of us, yes. But the war changed everything. Kale's hand found a small flowering vine, and the plant immediately began to glow brighter under his touch. The military developed neural dampeners to block our empathic abilities. They said it was for our own protection, to keep us from being overwhelmed by the pain and fear of battle. But really, it was to control us. A Zephyrian who can't feel is a Zephyrian who can't resist. Naya watched the interplay between Kale and the plant life around them. Every flower, every leaf seemed to respond to his presence, creating a symphony of color and movement that was breathtaking. But you can still feel, she observed. You're not dampened. I removed the implant, Kale said, his voice carrying a note of defiance. It was dangerous, the surgery nearly killed me. But I'd rather die than live without the ability to connect. Art without emotion is just decoration. Is that why they were hunting you? Because you refused the dampener? Kale shook his head. That was just the beginning. I started creating art that helped other Zephyrians remember what it felt like to be whole. Living sculptures that could resonate with suppressed emotions, awakening dormant neural pathways. The authorities declared it a form of terrorism. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the grove respond to their combined presence. Naya had never seen her plants react this way, usually they provided a gentle, constant glow, but now they pulsed in complex patterns that seemed almost like music made visible. Naya, Kale said softly, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you build this sanctuary? What made you abandon your career, your life on Earth, to help strangers from worlds you'd never seen? Naya considered the question, her fingers trailing through the moss. I was working on a project to develop crops that could grow in the harsh conditions of newly terraformed worlds. The research was going well, we'd created several hybrid species that could survive in almost any environment. But then I learned what they were really for. What do you mean? The Terran Colonial Authority wasn't planning to use them to feed colonists. They wanted to create agricultural dependencies, planets that could only sustain themselves by growing these specific crops, which could only be cultivated using proprietary Terran genetic sequences. It was a way to ensure economic control over new worlds indefinitely. Kale's eyes widened. Biological imperialism. Exactly. When I tried to object, they offered me a promotion and a research facility on Mars. When I refused that, they threatened to have me arrested for industrial espionage. Apparently asking too many questions about your own research project is a crime. So you disappeared. I faked my death and used my botanical knowledge to create this place. I figured if I couldn't stop the exploitation of new worlds, I could at least provide refuge for those who suffered because of it. Kale reached out and took her hand, the gesture sending that familiar warm sensation through her consciousness. You gave up everything to help others. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Naya felt heat rise in her cheeks. It's not that noble. I just couldn't live with myself if I'd stayed silent. That's exactly what makes it noble. Kale's thumb traced over her knuckles, and she noticed that where he touched, tiny flowers began to bloom from the moss beneath their joined hands. Naya, I need to tell you something. What's happening between us, this connection we're experiencing, it's not normal, even for a Zephyrian. What do you mean? Empathic bonding usually requires deliberate intention and specific conditions. But with you, it's happening naturally. I can feel your emotions as clearly as my own, and apparently you're experiencing my memories in your dreams. Naya's heart began to race. Is that bad? No, Kale said quickly, his grip on her hand tightening. It's extraordinary. Among my people, such a connection is called soul singing, when two beings resonate at the same emotional frequency. It's incredibly rare, and I've never heard of it happening between different species. What does it mean? Kale's eyes met hers, and in their multifaceted depths she saw wonder, fear, and something that made her breath catch. It means we're compatible at the deepest possible level. Our consciousness, our emotional patterns, our very souls, they're in harmony. The implications of his words settled over them like a blanket of starlight. Naya found herself leaning closer to Kale, drawn by an invisible force that seemed to emanate from the very center of her being. Kale, she whispered, I've been having more than just dreams. Sometimes when I'm working in the gardens, I'll suddenly know things, about plant biology, about the emotional resonance of different species. Knowledge I've never learned. You're accessing my memories, he said, his voice filled with amazement. The bond is deepening. Naya, this is how Zephyrian life mates connect. But it usually takes months of deliberate practice, and even then, only with another Zephyrian. Are you saying we're? Naya couldn't finish the sentence. I'm saying that somehow, impossibly, we're becoming bonded. Not just romantically, but at the level of consciousness itself. The singing trees around them seemed to respond to the intensity of their emotions, their crystalline leaves chiming in harmony. The moss beneath them bloomed with thousands of tiny flowers, creating a carpet of living light. I should be terrified, Naya said, studying their joined hands. This is beyond anything I've ever experienced. But instead, I feel complete. Like I've been missing something my whole life and just now found it. That's the soul song, Kale said softly. It's recognition. Not just of compatibility, but of something deeper. My people believe that consciousness itself seeks unity, that every soul has a perfect harmonic match somewhere in the universe. And you think we're each other's match? I think, Kale said, lifting their joined hands to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles, that the universe conspired to bring us together. You created a sanctuary for displaced souls, and I was a displaced soul in need of sanctuary. But maybe we were both seeking the same thing. What's that? Home, he said simply. Not a place, but a person. Someone who understands us completely, who accepts us for who we are, who makes us feel like we belong. Naya felt tears prick her eyes. I haven't belonged anywhere in years. Not since I left Earth. You belong with me, Kale said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who had found their truth. And I belong with you. If you'll have me. Instead of answering with words, Naya leaned forward and kissed him. The moment their lips touched, the world exploded into sensation. She could feel his joy, his wonder, his deep and abiding love mixing with her own emotions until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. The garden around them responded to their emotional intensity, blooming into a paradise of light and color. Flowers that had never existed before spontaneously generated from the moss, their petals shifting through spectrums of color that human eyes had never seen. When they finally broke apart, both were glowing, Kale with his natural bioluminescence, and Naya with reflected light from the thousands of flowers that had bloomed in response to their kiss. That was. Naya began. Perfect, Kale finished. Absolutely perfect. They spent the rest of the day in the grove, sharing stories, dreams, and gentle touches that deepened their connection with each passing hour. As night fell over the asteroid, they lay together on the moss, watching the stars through the transparent dome that protected the garden. Kale, Naya said, her head pillowed on his shoulder, what happens now? I mean, practically speaking. We can't stay hidden here forever. I don't know, he admitted, his fingers combing through her hair. But I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together. The bond between us, it's not just emotional anymore. It's becoming something that transcends physical separation. What do you mean? I mean that even if we were forced apart, we'd still be connected. Soul-bonded pairs can communicate across vast distances, share strength and comfort even when they're on different worlds. Naya turned to look at him, seeing the stars reflected in his multifaceted eyes. Is that what you want? To be bonded to me for life? Kale's smile was radiant. I want to be bonded to you for whatever comes after life. In every possible universe, in every possible timeline, I want to find you again and again. Then let's make it official, Naya said, surprising herself with her certainty. If there's a Zephyrian bonding ceremony, I want to do it properly. Are you sure? Once we're fully bonded, there's no going back. We'll be connected for the rest of our lives. Naya kissed him again, pouring all her love and certainty into the gesture. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Above them, the stars seemed to pulse in approval, and the gardens of Haven's Rest bloomed with new and impossible beauty. The message arrived 3 days later through encrypted channels that Naya didn't even know existed. Vera had been monitoring Zephyrian resistance networks, and when word spread about Kale's presence at the sanctuary, it drew attention from an unexpected source. Her name is Thyra Moonwhisper, Vera explained as they gathered in the communications bay. She's what the Zephyrians call a soul keeper, one of the few who still remembers the old bonding rituals from before the war. Kale's expression was a mixture of hope and disbelief. I thought they were all dead or in hiding. The military specifically targeted the Soul Keepers because they were the guardians of our most sacred traditions. Apparently not all of them, Vera said, pulling up a holographic display. She's been living in the Outer Rim, moving between asteroid mining stations and providing spiritual guidance to displaced Zephyrians. When she heard about your situation, she offered to come here. Naya felt a flutter of nervousness. What exactly does a bonding ritual involve? It's complicated, Kale said, taking her hand. The ceremony itself is beautiful, but it requires specific conditions. Sacred pools, resonant crystals, and most importantly, the presence of a soul keeper who can guide the process and ensure the bond forms properly. And if it doesn't form properly? Kale's grip tightened on her hand. In the worst case, we could lose ourselves entirely. Our consciousness could merge so completely that we cease to exist as individuals. Or the bond could be incomplete, leaving us with a painful awareness of each other that never resolves into true connection. But, Vera interjected, Thyra says that given how naturally your bond has been developing, the risks are minimal. She's actually more concerned about the political implications. What do you mean? Naya asked. An official soul bond between a human and a Zephyrian would be the first of its kind. It would prove that interspecies bonding is possible, which could change the entire dynamic of the war. Some factions would see it as hope for peace. Others would see it as a threat to species purity. Kale was quiet for a long moment, his bioluminescent patterns shifting through deep blues and purples, colors Naya had learned indicated serious contemplation. We'd become symbols, he said finally. Whether we wanted to or not. We already are symbols, Naya replied. Your art, my sanctuary, our connection, it's all part of the same thing. We're proving that cooperation and understanding are possible. 3 days later, Thyra arrived in a ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from parts of a dozen different vessels. When she emerged from the docking bay, Naya's first thought was that she looked nothing like what she'd expected. Thyra was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, her skin bearing the deep luminescence that came with centuries of life. Her hair was pure silver, braided with crystals that chimed softly as she moved. But her eyes held the weight of worlds, deep pools of wisdom that seemed to see through to the very heart of things. Kale Nethys, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the station's walls. I knew your grandmother. She was a gifted artist, like you. She would be proud to see you honoring the old ways. Elder Thyra, Kale replied, bowing deeply. I'm honored by your presence. Thyra's gaze shifted to Naya, and for a moment, Naya felt as though she were being examined at the cellular level. And you are the sanctuary keeper. Naya Voss, who left her world to tend the gardens of the displaced. Yes, Elder. Do you know what you're asking for, child? A soul bond is not a human marriage or a Zephyrian life partnership. It is the joining of two consciousness into something greater than the sum of their parts. You will never again be truly alone, but you will also never again be only yourself. Naya felt Kale's emotional support flowing through their developing connection. I understand, Elder. And I want this. I want to be bonded to Kale for whatever time we have. Thyra studied them both for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. But the ritual must be performed properly, with all the traditional elements. Do you have a sacred grove? The heart of the sanctuary, Naya said. Where the singing trees grow. Show me. The central grove had transformed even more dramatically since Naya and Kale's first kiss. The moss had evolved into complex patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living mandalas. New species of flowers had spontaneously generated, hybrids that shouldn't have been possible, combining terrestrial and Zephyrian genetics in ways that defied conventional biology. Thyra walked through the grove slowly, her fingers trailing over bark and leaves, her expression growing more amazed with each step. This is extraordinary, she breathed. The grove has already begun to resonate with your bond. Look at these formations, they're creating natural amplification patterns. She pointed to where the crystalline formations in the singing trees had grown into complex geometric shapes. These are harmonic resonators. They're focusing and purifying the emotional energy in this space. And these flowers, she knelt beside a cluster of blooms that seemed to be made of living light. They're responding to your combined consciousness. They're literally manifestations of your love. Is that normal? Naya asked, suddenly worried. Nothing about your bond is normal, child. But that doesn't make it wrong. It makes it miraculous. Thyra stood, her ancient eyes bright with wonder. This grove has become a sacred space through the power of your connection. It's perfect for the ritual. The preparation took 2 days. Thyra guided them through meditation exercises designed to align their consciousness and prepare them for the deeper connection that would come. She taught Naya the traditional responses in the Zephyrian language, the meaning of each gesture and word. The ritual has 3 phases, Thyra explained as they sat in the grove on the evening before the ceremony. First, the recognition, where you formally acknowledge your choice to bond. Second, the opening, where you lower all mental barriers and allow your consciousness to merge. Third, the sealing, where the bond is made permanent. What happens if something goes wrong during the opening? Naya asked. I will be there to guide you, Thyra assured her. My role is to monitor the process and intervene if necessary. But given how naturally your bond has been developing, I don't anticipate problems. The night before the ceremony, Naya found herself unable to sleep. She walked through the sanctuary, checking on the various gardens and thinking about the path that had brought her here. A year ago, she'd been a lonely scientist tending to plants in isolation. Tomorrow, she would be bonded to the love of her life in a ceremony that might change the course of galactic history. She found Kale in the workshop where he'd been creating their bonding gifts, a traditional exchange of art that symbolized the offering of one's soul to another. He was putting the finishing touches on a sculpture that took her breath away. It was a tree, but not like any tree that had ever existed. Its trunk was formed from crystallized starlight, its branches reaching toward a canopy of living flowers that shifted through every color imaginable. As she watched, the sculpture pulsed with gentle light, and she realized it was responding to her presence. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's us, Kale said, his voice soft with emotion. Every emotion we've shared, every moment of connection, every dream we've experienced together. It's all here, preserved in living art. Naya revealed her own gift, a seed pod unlike anything that had ever existed. I've spent weeks engineering this, she said. It contains the genetic patterns of every plant in the sanctuary, combined with Zephyrian bioluminescent properties. When it grows, it will become a tree that can survive in any environment, on any world, and it will always bloom with the colors of hope. A tree that carries the essence of the sanctuary with it, Kale breathed. So no matter where we go, we'll always have a piece of this place with us. They held each other in the soft glow of the workshop, neither speaking, both understanding that this was the last night they would be separate beings. The ceremony began at dawn, with the first light of the distant sun filtering through the dome. Thyra had arranged the grove according to ancient tradition, with circles of resonant crystals and pools of bioluminescent water that reflected the colors of their emotions. Naya wore a simple gown of silver fabric that seemed to capture and hold light. Kale was dressed in traditional Zephyrian ceremonial robes that shifted color with his emotions. As they stood before Thyra in the center of the grove, the entire sanctuary seemed to hold its breath. "We gather in this sacred space," Thyra began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "to witness the joining of two souls across the void of space and species. Kale Nethys of Zephyria Prime, Nyavos of Earth, do you come here of your own free will, understanding the magnitude of what you ask?" "We do," they replied in unison. The recognition passed in a blur of ancient words and ritualized gestures. Naya found herself responding in perfect Zephyrian, the language flowing from her lips as naturally as breathing. The grove responded to each phase of the ceremony, the singing trees creating harmonies that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. Then came the opening. "Join hands," Thyra instructed. "Open your hearts, your minds, your very souls to each other. Hold nothing back. Let the barriers that separate you dissolve." As their palms touched, Naya felt the familiar warm sensation expand exponentially. But this time, instead of gentle sharing, she felt her consciousness rushing toward Kale's like a river meeting the sea. She experienced his memories not as foreign images but as her own lived experiences. His childhood among the crystal forests, his first attempts at art, the pain of losing his family to the war, the joy of discovering his abilities, all of it became part of her. And in return, she felt him experiencing her life. Her lonely childhood as an only child, her wonder at discovering the mysteries of plant biology, her decision to leave Earth, the years of solitude in the sanctuary, he lived through all of it as if it were his own past. "Breathe," Thyra's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Don't resist the merger. Let it happen naturally." The boundaries between them dissolved completely. For a terrifying, wonderful moment, Naya couldn't tell where she ended and Kale began. They were one consciousness, one being, one soul split across two bodies. She felt his wonder at the experience, his overwhelming love, his absolute certainty that this was right. Then, gradually, they began to separate again, but not completely. They were still individual beings, but now they were connected by something deeper than emotion or thought. It was as if they had become two notes in the same chord, distinct but harmonious. "The ceiling," Thyra announced, and her voice was thick with emotion. "By the power of love that transcends species, by the harmony of souls that defies distance, by the bond that unites consciousness across the void, I pronounce you eternally bonded. What has been joined in love cannot be sundered by time or space." The grove exploded into light and color. Every plant, every flower, every blade of moss erupted in bioluminescent glory. The singing trees chimed in perfect harmony, their crystalline leaves creating music that seemed to celebrate the joining of two souls. As Kale pulled Naya into his arms for their first kiss as bonded partners, she felt the completion of something that had been growing between them since the moment they met. They were no longer two separate beings who had fallen in love. They were one soul, one heart, one life shared across two bodies. And in that moment, surrounded by the living celebration of their bond, Naya knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Not just as partners, but as one consciousness united by love that transcended every boundary the universe could create. The alarm pierced through Haven's rest like a knife through silk. Naya jolted awake in Kale's arms, their bond immediately flooding with shared adrenaline and fear. Through the transparent dome of their sleeping chamber, she could see the unmistakable gleam of military vessels emerging from hyperspace. 3 ships, Kale said, his enhanced vision picking out details she couldn't see. Terran design, but flying under galactic enforcement flags. Naya was already moving, pulling on her emergency gear with practiced efficiency. How did they find us? The bonding ceremony, Vera's voice crackled through the comm system as she contacted them from the control room. The energy signature must have been detected. I'm picking up massive sensor sweeps, they're looking for something specific. Through their bond, Naya felt Kale's guilt like a physical pain. This is my fault, he said. I should have considered that the ritual might. Stop, Naya interrupted, gripping his shoulders. We made this choice together. No regrets, remember. Their connection stabilized as they drew strength from each other. Even in crisis, the bond served as an anchor, allowing them to think clearly despite the danger. Attention, Haven's Rest, a voice boomed across all communication frequencies. This is Enforcement Officer Jax Riven of the Galactic Compliance Division. You are harboring a wanted fugitive and operating an illegal sanctuary. Surrender immediately and no harm will come to your residence. Naya's blood ran cold. She'd heard of Jax Riven, a former mining engineer turned enforcement officer who'd gained a reputation for tracking down illegal operations in the Outer Rim. But there had always been rumors that he was more sympathetic to refugees than his position required. Naya, we have a problem, Thyra's voice came through the internal comms. The elderly Soul Keeper had remained at the sanctuary after the bonding ceremony, claiming she felt called to document this historic event. I'm reading the energy signatures of those ships. They're equipped with neural dampening fields. What does that mean? Naya asked, though Kale's sudden surge of panic through their bond gave her a terrible suspicion. It means they can sever our connection, Kale said, his voice tight with fear. If they activate those fields, the bond could be damaged or destroyed entirely. Absolutely not, Naya said fiercely. We find another way. She activated the sanctuary's emergency protocols, sealing the most vulnerable areas and preparing the evacuation pods. Haven's Rest had been designed with exactly this scenario in mind. If the authorities ever found them, the residents would have multiple escape routes. Vera, how many people do we have aboard right now? 43 refugees from 12 different species, plus our crew. The evacuation pods can handle maybe half that number. Naya closed her eyes, running calculations. Then we don't evacuate. We run. The sanctuary can't achieve escape velocity, Vera protested. It's not designed for that kind of acceleration. No, but the Whispering Dawn can. Naya was referring to her personal ship, a heavily modified transport vessel she'd acquired through less-than-legal channels. It's big enough to carry everyone if we're creative about space allocation. That's assuming we can get to it before they board us, Kale pointed out. The comm crackled again. Haven's Rest, this is Officer Riven. I'm detecting your preparations to resist. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're specifically here for the Zephyrian known as Kale Nethys and any humans who have violated interspecies contamination protocols. Contamination protocols? Naya spat. Is that what they're calling our bond? Through the sanctuary's sensors, she watched the enforcement ships take up blocking positions. But something about their formation seemed off. They weren't arranged for optimal boarding or maximum firepower. Instead, they seemed positioned to herd rather than capture. Vera, can you patch me through to Officer Riven directly? Naya, what are you doing? Kale asked through their bond. Testing a theory, she replied. A moment later, she was speaking directly to the enforcement officer. Officer Riven, this is Naya Voss, Administrator of Haven's Rest. I want to negotiate. Ms. Voss, there's nothing to negotiate. You're harboring a fugitive and operating without proper licensing. Surrender now and we can discuss reduced charges. I think you know there's more to this situation than illegal sanctuary operations, Naya said carefully. I think you know exactly why you're here, and it has nothing to do with standard enforcement. There was a long pause. When Riven spoke again, his voice had changed slightly, less official, more personal. Ms. Voss, I need you to understand that there are forces at play here beyond local enforcement. Orders from the highest levels of government. If I don't bring in Kale Nethes and evidence of illegal interspecies bonding, other officers will be sent. Officers who won't be as considerate as I am. You're trying to warn us, Naya realized. I'm trying to do my job while causing the least harm possible. But I need you to work with me here. Naya looked at Kale, their bond allowing instant communication of complex thoughts and emotions. They both understood what Riven was really saying. He was giving them a chance to escape, but they had to be smart about it. Officer Riven, I need 20 minutes to prepare our surrender. Some of our residents require special atmospheric conditions for transport. You have 15 minutes. Don't test my patience, Ms. Voss. The moment the communication ended, Naya was in motion. Everyone to emergency stations, she announced over the internal comms. We're implementing Exodus Protocol. Exodus Protocol was something she'd hoped never to use, a complete evacuation of the sanctuary using every available ship. The residents had practiced it dozens of times, but never under actual threat. The neural dampening fields, Kale said as they rushed through the corridors. If they activate them during our escape. They won't, Naya said with more confidence than she felt. Riven is giving us a chance. He could have activated them already if he wanted to. The next 15 minutes were controlled chaos. Refugees streamed toward the docking bays while Naya and her crew prepared the Whispering Dawn for massive overload. Thyra insisted on helping, using her knowledge of Zephyrian technology to optimize the ship's life support systems for multiple species. The children, Kessa said, appearing at Naya's side. The young Zephyrian had grown significantly since the attack on Helio 7, and now served as an unofficial liaison for the younger refugees. They're scared. They don't understand why we have to leave. Naya knelt to the girl's level, feeling Kale's emotional support flowing through their bond. Sometimes, when we build something beautiful, there are people who want to destroy it because they're afraid of change. We're not running away, we're protecting what we've built so we can build it again somewhere else. Will you and Kale stay together? Kessa asked, her large eyes reflecting the bioluminescent patterns that had begun appearing throughout the sanctuary. Always, Naya promised. No matter what happens, we'll stay together. The loading was nearly complete when Vera's voice crackled over the comms. Naya, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up additional ships dropping out of hyperspace. Military configuration, and they're not broadcasting galactic enforcement codes. How many? 7. Maybe 8. And they're moving fast. Through the viewports, Naya could see the new arrivals, sleek, aggressive vessels that looked like they were designed for war rather than enforcement. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the configuration. Those are Terran Colonial Authority ships, she said. They're not here to arrest us. They're here to eliminate us. Officer Riven's voice came across all frequencies, and this time there was no mistaking the urgency in his tone. Haven's Rest, you need to move now. I can't hold them off for long. What's he talking about? Kale asked. Their answer came in the form of weapons fire. The enforcement ships had turned away from Haven's Rest and were engaging the military vessels in combat. Through the sanctuary's sensors, Naya watched in amazement as Riven's small force fought desperately to buy them time. He's protecting us, she breathed. He's risking everything to give us a chance to escape. The Whispering Dawn launched with 47 souls aboard, massively over capacity but functional. As they cleared the sanctuary's docking bay, Naya took one last look at the place that had been her home for 3 years. The garden still glowed with bioluminescent beauty, the singing trees still chimed their ethereal melodies. But she knew she'd never see it again. Set course for the Kepler Nebula, she told Vera, who was piloting. We can lose ourselves in the interference fields while we figure out our next move. But as they accelerated away from Haven's Rest, the military ships broke through Riven's defensive line. 3 vessels peeled off to pursue the Whispering Dawn, their superior speed allowing them to close the distance rapidly. "They're gaining on us," Vera reported. "And they're charging weapons." The neural dampening fields, Thyra warned from her position at the sensor station. "I'm detecting activation sequences." Naya felt Kale's hand find hers, their bond pulsing with shared determination. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together." The first dampening pulse hit the ship like a wave of static electricity. Naya gasped as she felt their connection waver, the constant presence of Kale's consciousness flickering like a candle in a strong wind. "Hold on to me," she said, gripping his hand tighter. "Don't let go." The second pulse was stronger, and this time Naya felt genuine fear as their bond stretched and distorted. Through the fading connection, she could feel Kale's panic, his desperate struggle to maintain their link. Then, unexpectedly, the dampening field shut off. "This is Officer Riven to all vessels," came the transmission. "I am invoking Article 47 of the Galactic Peace Accords. These refugees are under my personal protection, and any action against them constitutes an act of aggression against Galactic Enforcement Authority." "Riven, stand down," came an angry response from the military ships. "You're interfering with a classified operation. And you're interfering with a lawful enforcement action. Back off, or I'll be forced to consider you hostile." The military ships hesitated, clearly not expecting this level of resistance from what should have been a simple operation. In that moment of confusion, the Whispering Dawn reached the edge of the nebula and disappeared into the swirling clouds of ionized gas. "We made it," Vera announced, her voice filled with relief and disbelief. But Naya wasn't celebrating yet. Through their bond, she could feel Kale's pain. The neural dampening had left him with a splitting headache and a sense of disconnection that was deeply disturbing to someone accustomed to constant empathic awareness. "How do you feel?" she asked, examining him carefully. "Like part of me has been torn away," he admitted. "But it's coming back. The bond is reasserting itself." Thyra approached them, her ancient eyes filled with concern. The dampening fields were designed for standard Zephyrian neural patterns. "Your bond is something new, something they don't understand. That's what saved you, they couldn't calibrate the fields properly." "Will there be lasting damage?" Naya asked. "I don't think so. But this was a warning. They know about you now, and they'll be better prepared next time." As the Whispering Dawn navigated deeper into the nebula, Naya held Kale close and tried to process what had just happened. They'd lost their sanctuary, but they'd saved everyone aboard. They'd been hunted by their own governments, but they'd found an unexpected ally in Officer Riven. Most importantly, their bond had survived its first real test. The neural dampening fields had tried to tear them apart, but their connection had proven stronger than the technology designed to destroy it. "What do we do now?" one of the refugees asked. Naya looked around at the faces surrounding her, beings from a dozen different worlds, all looking to her for leadership and hope. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also the strength that came from Kale's unwavering support through their bond. "Now we find a new home," she said. "Somewhere beyond the reach of those who would destroy us for loving across species lines. And we prove that what we've built together is stronger than any force that tries to tear us apart." Through their bond, she felt Kale's fierce agreement and love. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not just as lovers, but as partners in creating a future where love could transcend any boundary the universe could create. The nebula swirled around them, beautiful and dangerous, hiding them from their pursuers but also isolating them from everything familiar. It was the perfect metaphor for their situation, lost in the unknown, but still together, still bonded, still hopeful that somewhere among the stars they would find their new home.